Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Charles Schwab Challenge DFS Tactics Show. We've got a chaotic forecast to look at, the ownership projections, and everything else you need to optimize your lineups and dominate this week in DFS for the Charles Schwab Challenge. Got a lot to get into. Let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytic tools out there, no doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted research around the previous 12 winners, maybe it's 11, winners of the Charles Schwab Challenge going back to 2012. The pattern or the things that those winners share in common leading into their win at Colonial, and also the players in the field this week who also fit that criteria. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contest that I play. That comes out later this evening after Calls, the DFS Tactics Show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. Finally, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of course history, recent form. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday night as we continue the DFS talk over there. We talk about game theory, our favorite areas of the price board, players that we're fading, scared to fade, but are our top low price plays, and so on. You want to be able to join us in his Substack chat. The only way you're going to be able to do that is if you are a subscriber to his article. So go show him some support. Follow him over on social media as well. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. In addition to the poll question, which I have typed out, I want to hear from you all in that regard. Who is your winner this week? How much do you think the renovation is going to play a factor, which we'll talk about here in a moment? How much do you think the wind's going to play a factor? Who are you pivoting to, fading away from, all the good stuff that we normally talk about on a DFS Tactics Show? So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Charles Schwab Challenge. And we start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening over at the Super Forecast at Windfinder. And before we start covering that, let me talk to you about the poll question. How much are you factoring the renovation of Colonial in your thought process this week? Are you factoring it in a lot, moderate amount, a little, not at all? Of course, we talked about this on Monday. Should have talked about it on Sunday, but quite honestly, I simply forgot that the course went through a renovation on Sunday night, and then hopefully corrected myself, informed you all of the necessary changes you need to think about in terms of Colonial for this week and moving forward. So I would love to hear from the community how much you all are factoring in the renovation to Colonial. The forecast for Fort Worth, in fact, they are under a tornado watch as it is right now. Looks like they're getting absolutely pummeled with some rain at the moment. With that, however, we look at the forecast for tomorrow and Friday. Looks like winds are going to be really, really calm. However, I do want to emphasize that they're supposedly getting a whole lot of rain. So if you are at least somewhat local to the area, would love to hear how the weather is. Hopefully you're safe with the tornado watches, but would love to hear the weather report if you are somewhat local, if you are getting a bunch of rain, because that would make the course very, very soft tomorrow morning and with very little wind, it looks like the Thursday AM portion of the draw is going to have a very, very, very significant advantage. Even if the course wasn't soft, if it was just normal, we would still give a pretty heavy advantage to the Thursday AM portion because they've got very little wind in the forecast for tomorrow. And then the wind really, really picks up in the afternoon and stays very consistent through Friday afternoon and then dies off a little bit. So both days, this half of the draw, the Thursday AM and the Friday PM, appear to have a significant advantage. And because of that, I am going to be almost exclusively looking at Thursday AM, Friday PM players. There are a few exceptions, most notably, and I have the tee times up over here off to the side. So if you see me looking over, that's what I'm doing. Most notably, Scotty Scheffler is in the afternoon tomorrow. Pardon me as I get everything situated here. I want that there. And I need this here. Sorry. Fumbling with where I want particular things. Okay. So, again, I've got a pretty significant advantage for Thursday AM, Friday PM. I'm going to be going there almost exclusively with the exception of maybe a couple of players. As I mentioned, Scotty Scheffler is in the Thursday PM wave. There's a couple other players that I want to like, but it's hard to deny the fact that the Thursday PM, Friday AM half of the draw certainly looks like it has the worst end of it, pretty clearly. So take this information how you will. Maybe you aren't scared of the wind and you're going to play your guys regardless. Again, I think there's a very significant advantage for Thursday AM, Friday PM. Regardless, players are going to be dealing with wind, especially during the cut portion of the tournament, whatever half of the draw they are on. And if we zoom out, take a look at the weekend, there's a lot more wind in the forecast as well. Saturday, sustained winds near 20, gusts into the upper 20s. Sunday looks very gusty as well. Looks like no matter where you are in the draw, players are going to be dealing with wind. So because of that, when we move to Fantasy National, our top performers in moderate and windy conditions in the past couple of years: Scotty, Jordan Spieth, Denny McCarthy, Max Homa, Adam Scott, Ricky Fowler, Harry Hall, Patrick Rogers, Justin Rose, and Sung Jae. So definitely give these players a boost in your considerations. Definitely use these in tiebreaker scenarios. These players have generally played very well in the wind the past couple of years. Scrolling on down a little bit more, Colin Morikawa, Carson Young, Chris Kirk, Andrew Novak, Adam Schenk, Brendan Todd, Eric Cole, Brian Harmon, Mark Hubbard, Akshay Bhatia. Those are your top 20 in terms of players in the wind the past couple of years. And then the other side of that coin, the players who have not played well: Kevin Kisner, Carl Yuan, Tom Hoagie, Matty Schmid, Wesley Bryan. Justin Lauer has been very bad in moderate and windy conditions. He's been okay in windy. I mean, it's fine, gaining a quarter of a shot per round, but he's been really bad in moderate. Let's see, Martin Trainer, Camilo Villegas, Davis Riley. Again, we've talked about Tom Kim quite a bit this week. He has played very well in the windiest of conditions. In the moderate conditions, he's been pretty bad, so that's what drags him down. Matthew Neesmith, Webb Simpson, Troy Merritt, so on. You can see the players who have not played well in the wind the past couple of years. With that, let's just go ahead and get straight into the mixed condition model and then start talking about the price board and the rankings that I have for this week. And Scotty Scheffler's not number one, surprisingly. So would be interested to hear from you all in that regard as well. The mixed condition model that I have made for the Charles Schwab Challenge this week, I have 20% in strokes gain approach. Talked about this quite a bit on Sunday and Monday. It's just the preferred shot type here at Colonial. Ended up not using any off the tee. I got uncomfortable the more I looked at the pattern of off the tee yesterday and into today, with off the tee and distance each year the past 4 years declining in importance. So instead, I just put a little extra percent in approach, and that's why I ended up with 20% in strokes gain approach, especially with the amount of wind that is seemingly in play this week at Colonial. I really want to emphasize players who are going to be very good with their irons. I did this last week with the PGA Championship, and I really, really liked the results that I got. How I ended up on players like Victor Hovland, like Matt Wallace, and some of these others. So I've got putting in the last 24 rounds up to 10% this week. As I looked back on the previous champions, even though I did not explicitly say it in the research that I posted, limited to 140 characters and whatnot, the putting form of the past several champions, I mean, going back all the way to really 2015, I think Boo Weekley in 2014 kind of bucked this trend a little bit. But from 2015 on, even Emiliano Grillo last year, they had very good form putting coming into the tournament. I'm talking in the past 2 to 3 months. And it's not just on bent, which I'll talk about here in a minute. I mean, we're really starting to come into the portion of the PGA Tour schedule that features bent. It's mostly been Bermuda and probably more so Poa Trivialis and Bermuda, or Poa Trivialis overseed Bermuda bases. So just a lot of good putting form coming in to Colonial has been very paramount, at least for the champions. So 10% in putting, just flat out strokes gained putting in the last 3 months or 24 rounds, whichever happens first. I do not want to ignore the fact that these are bent greens, and they have played fast every single round for the past 3 to 4 years. So I am looking at 5% in terms of our fast bent green specialists, but I am more so inclined at looking at who's in good putting form, but also looking at perhaps a little bit of some bent specialists. 10% in greens when scoring is difficult relative to par. With all the wind, Colonial has played difficult for the past 2 to 3 years anyway. I don't think the wind is going to help the players score any better, considering the amount of wind that's in the forecast. So with these greens being small, I just want to see who hits greens, or plenty of them, when scoring is difficult. Because if the players are hitting the greens, they're giving themselves essentially very good opportunities. I know that's not technically true by definition, but small greens, you're going to be pretty darn close in terms of proximity to the hole relative to the PGA Tour, at least. This metric we didn't talk about at all this week, and the credit goes to Gabe on this one. And again, if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able and have access to knowledge such as his, that the greens around Colonial are so protected by bunkers that instead of looking at around the green, more often than not, if the player is having to chip or pitch or whatever, it's probably from a bunker. So that's why I wanted to look at sand saves in the recency, who has been doing well in sand saves. So this is kind of taking the around the green portion of the mixed condition model, just focusing on sand saves. 5% in birdies gained when scoring is difficult relative to par, but as we talked about all week, the bogey avoidance is much, much more important. So 10% in bogey avoidance when scoring is difficult relative to par. This is another straight copy from the PGA Championship that I had last week in that mixed condition model, and again, really, really liked the results that I got from it. So taking this with me this week as well. So 10% in bogey avoidance, but it's not all just about the bogey avoidance. You do have to get some amount of birdies. So I wanted to see both of those. 5% in proximity, 150 to 175. I ended up including this in the mixed condition model. The more I talked myself through it Monday night, the more I started playing around with making the mixed condition model, the more I liked the idea of having this prox 150 to 175, considering the majority of the players who have played well here have done well from this range. Not to mention the majority of approach shots come from this range as well. So kind of killing two birds with one stone essentially with that. The good form of players who play well from this range, and the fact that the most number of approach shots come from this range. Rounding out the mixed condition model, 5% in total par threes, didn't separate any range. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. 5% in par fives. Look, there's only 2 par fives here. So they are quite mitigated in importance. Instead, I would have loved to have put some more percentage in here. You could maybe argue to take the extra 5% I put in approach and bring it to the par fours. But I have 5% in all par fours, 5% in 350 to 400 par fours, and 10% 400 to 450. And because of the lengthening of the course, I do have a slight suspicion that the 450 to 500 may play a little bit more important than what we've seen in the past. But until we get that data next week, we won't know. So I wanted to stick with what has been known for Colonial the past several years, is that these short par fours are very, very important. But I did not want to ignore the 450 to 500. There are 3 of them on the scorecard now, so I think they might play, or they might have a little bit of added significance. But without any data to back that up, I didn't want to overemphasize it, so only 5% there. That is the mixed condition model that I have made for the week. Some obvious weaknesses if things turn out differently. If off the tee is a major factor, I'm going to be quite weak to that since I don't have any off the tee. I am quite worried about not having any accuracy off the tee. That is something that I have seen many players and other pundits in the DFS community talk about, is how fairways are such a big deal here. So I don't have anything in terms of off the tee at all. No fairways, no good drives, no off the tee. So I'm a little worried about the lack of accuracy, at least off the tee. I have been focused solely on the accuracy of the irons. So if off the tee does matter, I'm going to be weak. If around the green in general matters, not just sand saves, I'll be weak. If the par fives play more important, the par threes, all those, that's usual for every week. But those are the 2 big weaknesses that I think that I could envision come next week, is that especially the accuracy off the tee being a big factor, and I don't have any of that in the model. So anyway, there's the mixed condition model for this week's Charles Schwab Challenge. We will move to Microsoft Excel. the reveal of my rankings. And as a reminder for those of you who are returning viewers, if you are a new viewer, for your information, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The F&GC rank, which is a straight numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just covered, the metrics and the percentages that I have in them. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course the past 5 years. Yes, the Colonial went through a pretty extensive renovation, so you could argue to not have anything in course value. But until we know for a fact that it's going to play completely different, I didn't feel comfortable doing that because Colonial has been the most consistent PGA course on tour. I mean, it's held this event every year since 1946. So if the renovation doesn't change how Colonial plays, then we have a very good idea on the players who play it well, and the shot types and the metrics that perform well here. So kind of hedging to the side or the angle of the renovation not factoring in too much or not changing how the course plays too much. And I could be wrong, and that could be another area where I'm incorrect come next week. But that is what the second criteria is based in my rankings, is this course value. Of course, the lower the number, the better. And then lastly, we are playing DFS. We are trying to find unique options compared to our fellow contestants. So projected ownership per Fantasy National is also a factor in my rankings. You will note that I don't factor in anything in terms of half of the draw or wind or anything like that. That's why we cover Wind Finder at the beginning of the show. And for situations that appear like there's a clear half of the draw, that's why I have the leaderboard and tee times up off to the side, so we can talk about that as we go through the rankings here. But I don't inherently put that into my rankings. So for the Charles Schwab Challenge, as I teased earlier in the show, Brian Harman is actually my number 1 player ahead of Scotty Scheffler when all things considered. Because you see, purely by the numbers, Scotty Scheffler is number 1, and it's not close. But when you factor in how well the players have played the course the past 5 years and projected ownership, that's where Brian Harman edges out Scotty. So Brian Harman is my number 1 player. Scotty second. Seabez, Christian Bezadenhout third. Denny McCarthy fourth. I'm not in love with that. Andrew Putnam fifth. I'm also not in love with that. Rounding out the top 10, Max Homa, Tony Finau, C.T. Pan, Lucas Glover, and Akshay Bhatia. You can see Denny McCarthy's getting helped quite a bit by the fact that he is relatively low owned per Fantasy National. And I mentioned how I didn't like it. I talked about him a little bit on social media, how he has struggled here at Colonial. Sorry, let me clean off these glasses here. He's struggled at Colonial. He is only 2 for 5. In the past 5 years here, you see the course value is a lot higher than what you would want, especially if, compared to somebody like Brian Harman and Scotty. Tony Finau has played this course exceptionally well. Lucas Glover has played this event very, very well. So I do have some concerns with Denny McCarthy, considering he has not traditionally played this course well. I'm also not in love with Andrew Putnam up here. Now, yes, he has played pretty darn well here, but the fact that I don't have any off the tee is what really is contributing to his rise, because he kind of struggles off the tee, distance, and a little bit with accuracy. And the fact that I don't have any accuracy in here is probably why Putnam rises a lot of the metrics that we gathered, he's been really good at. He's been pretty good with his irons. He's actually avoided bogeys pretty well, especially when it's difficult. But a couple of things to note, he has really struggled from the proximity that is most prevalent here at Colonial, and he has struggled with par fives, as you can see there. So I'm not in love with McCarthy and Putnam being 4th and 5th. I understand why they're rising, but I just wanted to explain that. Everybody else, including CT Pan, I completely agree with. Petit has been in great form. Yes, he missed the cut last week at the PGA, but he's been generally in really good form. Glover, anytime you're emphasizing irons, pretty solid. But CT Pan has played pretty darn well here. Top 25 in irons, hits plenty of greens. So as a 6K play, somebody to really think about. But enough of rambling about my rankings. Let's see where our fellow contestants are going at various prices on the price board, and see who the players are that we may want to pivot to and fade away from to try and build our optimal lineups. So, in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 4 players this week. We have Scotty Scheffler at 13,300, Colin Morikawa at 11,000, Spieth 10.6, and Max Homa at 10.4. I will tell you now, these two have the bad end of the draw. Scotty Scheffler and Jordan Spieth are teeing off tomorrow afternoon, which means they're also getting the worst of it on Friday with Friday morning's gusty winds. It is extremely hard to ignore Scotty Scheffler. If you are willing to do so, you're going to gain a whole lot of leverage. You're going to gain a whole lot of uniqueness on majority of the DFS contestants that you play against, no matter what style of competition that you play, cash games, 50-50s, GPPs. If you're willing to fade Scheffler, you're going to gain a whole lot of uniqueness. And that tee time is worrisome, especially because I do think Colin Morikawa is going to be pretty good this week. He's on the good half of the draw. Max Homa has played very well here. He's on the good half of the draw. I like both of these players. It would be different if I did not like these two, at least from an analytical standpoint. But because I do, I'm going to be willing to take a chance. I'm going to fade Scotty Scheffler. I can't call it a full fade. I'm sure I'll have him once or twice just to, cover my ass. But I am certainly not going to be 20% on Scotty Scheffler. I'm not going to probably even be 10% on Scotty Scheffler. He's going to be a minimal play for me, trying to gain a whole lot of uniqueness. And I do think he has the potential to struggle by his standards. Considering the terrible draw that he has received. Morikawa, yes, the irons still don't appear to be very good, but they weren't very good coming into the PGA, and that didn't stop him from playing very, very well. Max Homa has played very, very well here at Colonial and recently. So I like both of these players, and that's where I've been going in the 10Ks. Jordan Spieth is a complete full fade for me. A little bit dangerous because he has played so well here at Colonial, but the irons haven't been good. He's really struggled recently in these shorter par fours. So I'm not crazy about it. I'm not crazy with Spieth, but if you're a big believer in course history, you don't want to ignore him. But he is on the bad half of the draw. So in the 10Ks, I'm going to use plenty of Colin Morikawa. I'm going to use plenty of Max Homa. I'm going to use very, very little of Scotty Scheffler. And if he plays well, which, again, he's the number 1 player in the world, it's well within reason to think he will play well, I will lose. But I'm going to take a pretty big chance this week and use very little of Scheffler and I'm going to be completely out on Spieth. Moving into the 9Ks, Finau, Minwoo Lee, Siwoo Kim, Harman, Sungjae, Hoagie, Scott, and Harris English. I'm completely out on Tom Hoagie, despite the fact that he rated 12th in my rankings. Again, he has the bad half of the draw. He's playing in the afternoon tomorrow. He's not played particularly well here. And there's several players I like in the 9Ks anyway. Yes, the irons are great. He's actually been putting very well, which is odd for Tom Hoagie. I expect that to start to normalize. He's just generally not a good putter, and if he starts gaining strokes consistently on the greens, then we'll have to reevaluate. But until he does it, over an extended period of time, say 6 months, 12 months, then I'll take notice. Right now, I think this is just a small sample size of him being hot. So I don't want any part of Tom Hoagie this week. If he plays well, I will lose. So right off the bat, Scheffler, Spieth, Tom Hoagie. If those three play well, I will lose. I'm not going to have any Tom Hoagie. I'm not going to have any Spieth. In the 9Ks, I like Finau. He's got the good half of the draw, but I don't know. Something just doesn't seem quite right. 16% is quite a bit to factor in for ownership. He's also kind of struggled with these shorter par fours. I like Finau, but I'm not as high on him as maybe 7th would insinuate. If I'm not using Scotty and not using Spieth, and I've got to be using somebody, it's Harman. This is the chalk I will eat in the upper portion of the price board. I love Brian Harman this week. You see the course value. He has played very, very well here at Colonial. He's also got the better end of the draw teeing up tomorrow morning. Really, really like Brian Harman. Adam Scott also has the good half of the draw. He didn't rate out particularly well. It's worth a look. Harris English I like a little bit, mostly because he's been in very, very good putting form. Generally putts bit well anyway. So in the 9Ks, I'm going to be using a little bit of Finau. Maybe not as much as you would think, considering he's 7th. But I'll be using him. I'm going to be extremely overweight on Brian Harman. I just think he's going to play extremely well this week. No exposure at all to Tom Hoagie. He's a full fade. I'll use a little bit of Harris English, and I'll dabble in a little bit of Adam Scott. Sungjae, I just don't know. Like he'll play well one week, he won't the next. I've given up trying to figure him out until he starts at least being somewhat consistent. I do not like the fit for Minwoo Lee at all. You see the course value, he hasn't played well here, and Siwoo has not played well here either. He hasn't putt well. He doesn't putt bent generally well at all anyway. He missed the cut, I think. I think he missed the cut last week at the PGA, having rated out very well, so I'm much lower on Siwoo as well. Moving into the 8s. Love Christian Bezuidenhout. This is some more chalk I'll eat. I don't care. He's actually playing really well lately, despite the fact that he missed the cut at the PGA Championship. He actually, if you dug into his stats, he actually wasn't that bad. He just lost quite a bit off the tee, and it wasn't a great fit for him, I don't think, Valhalla, because it's so long, and Bezuidenhout's not long. This is more of the style of a course that Seabez should play well. Voids bogeys. Number 2 putter on fast bent greens in this field. Number 1 in sand saves in this field. So I love Christian Bezuidenhout this week. Again, I mentioned I'm not nearly as high on Denny McCarthy as it would suggest, him being 4th. Having said that, he is on the good half of the draw. He is the number 1 putter in this field. He's the number 2 bogey avoider in this field. This is the classic example of what are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the analytics, the numbers, or are you going to believe the course history and how he has generally not played well here? Seeing him at 9%, that's probably worth giving him a pretty good look. But just understand you have enough reason to not play him because he's generally not played Colonial well. So I'll probably, like Adam Scott, I'll probably sprinkle in a little bit of Denny McCarthy, but if I'm up here in the upper eights, I am all about Christian Bezuidenhout. I actually don't mind Billy Horschel either. Don't go crazy with it because he's actually not as popular as you might think, or he's not as unique as you might think he would be. I actually don't hate it. I really like Justin Rose a lot this week, and he was one of the players that I gave a casual mention to last week for the PGA Championship in the top 10s. I really like Justin Rose this week. You see this course value. He is, in the past 5 years, he's been one of the best players at Colonial. He's a former champion here. Top 15 in greens when it's difficult. Top 10 in bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Top 10 in fast bent putting. So I really, really like Justin Rose, and I think he's going to stay pretty unique, even though he played so well at the PGA. And he's also one of these players who is on the good half of the draw. Moving down into the lower eights, Keegan maybe. Anytime we're on bent greens, I pay a little bit more attention to Keegan because despite his putting woes in the past, he's generally putt bent pretty well. You see top 10 in fast bent putting. 3rd in birdies when it's difficult, so he's not afraid to go low, especially when it's difficult. So I'm going to use some Keegan Bradley. And then at 8,000, I love Thomas Dietrich. Love Thomas Dietrich this week. He's on the good half of the draw. Yeah. Going to be pretty unique, I think. Give me all the Thomas Dietrich. If he does not play well, I will lose. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping into chat. Much appreciated. If you want the extended explanation, make sure to check out the show, rewatch the show. But it is the good half of the draw is the Thursday a.m., Friday p.m. Both of those days, the Thursday a.m. portion of the draw is getting the better end of the wind. But it's good to see you in chat. Hopefully you are ready for the Charles Schwab Challenge and going to have hopefully a successful week. So there's a look at the 8Ks. It doesn't look like many members of Fantasy National are in here except for maybe Seabez, which again, I'm going to eat that chalk. I love Seabez this week. Sepp Straka is garnering quite a bit of attention. He's on the good half of the draw. Not necessarily, thrilled about it, but I understand it. It's just a little bit too much ownership for my liking, but I understand it. It's probably a good play. I'm just more so in these more unique options in the 8Ks, the Justin Roses, the Thomas Dietrichs, who are still on the good half of the draw. Moving into the upper sevens, yes, Akshay Bhatia rated out top 10, but he is, he's on the bad half of the draw. That's what I thought. He's teeing up tomorrow afternoon, so be a little wary of that. Yes, he rated out second purely by the numbers, but you see he fell all the way to 10th because his one time, small sample size, but the one time he's played here, it wasn't that good. He's also pretty popular. He's on the bad half of the draw. I'm going to limit my use of Akshay Bhatia, that's for sure. When I talked about Seabez and chalk that I'll eat, the other piece of very big chalk that I'll eat is Aaron Rai. I think Aaron Rai fits Colonial very, very well. You see, he has played not necessarily the best, which is a little surprising. I think it's only once, maybe twice. But conceptually, this feels like a very, very good Aaron Rai course. So I'm going to use a whole lot of Aaron Rai. If he does not play well, I will lose. Probably be overexposed to him, even though he's sitting at 17.5 per Fantasy National. I also kind of like Taylor Moore. He's on the good half of the draw. So take a look at Taylor Moore. Top 15 at the PGA, nothing to sneeze at. Generally just kind of fairly solid all the way across here. Average to good. Nothing really elite except for par 5s. And the par 5s are quite mitigated here. Berger has played very well. So kind of the inverse of the Jordan Spieth argument. Kind of the inverse of Denny McCarthy. The analytics love these guys. Like Spieth, the analytics don't like, but he has good course history. McCarthy, the analytics like. He does not have good course history. Berger is much like Jordan Spieth in that regard. The analytics don't seem to like him, but he has very, very, very strong course history. I figured I'd mention it. I'm not going to be there, but he has at least shown signs of life recently. Instead, in the upper 7s, if I'm not using Aaron Rai or if I'm trying to get a little bit of uniqueness, he's burned me several times in the past, and I understand if you're going to be a little bit hesitant. I'm just highlighting him because he's on the good half of the draw. Hits plenty of greens still when it's difficult. Generally putts bent pretty darn well. I know the irons aren't quite there. I'm just highlighting it because he's on the good half of the draw. Hubbard. Yeah. I would like Hubbard, but he is going to be popular, and he's also on the bad half of the draw. So in the upper 7s, I'm going to use Aaron Rai, but I'm actually going to use some Taylor Moore and try to get off of a lot of the chalk of Aaron Rai. But I'm still going to use Aaron Rai. This is Chalk Ali. So I'm going to use him quite a bit of both of these guys. I will dabble a little bit in Batia, but he does have the bad half of the draw. Hubbard's got the bad half of the draw. I'll probably throw Ricky in a lineup or two, only because he is on the good half of the draw. Moving into the mid 7s, Lucas Glover going to be very chalky, but for good reason. When you emphasize irons, you always got to think about Lucas Glover. Avoids bogeys, plays these short par 4s exceptionally well. Gonna be chalky, no doubt about that. But whoops, meant to do that over here. Glover does have the bad half of the draw, so bad half of the draw and how popular he is might be enough to push you away. Wouldn't blame you. Eckroat. I apologize. I just don't have these memorized. Eckroat is on the good half of the draw. I do like him, but I don't like the ownership. I'm not nearly as high on Andrew Putnam as it might seem. And I think he has the bad half of the draw too. So I'm not nearly as high on him or Shank, really, for that matter, as it might seem. So in the mid 7s, I will still probably end up using Lucas Glover a little bit just because he has played so well here. I do like Austin Eckroat. I just don't like that ownership. Moving to the low 7s, a couple of players that I want to highlight for you all. I want to like everything about Lee Hodges. I do. I really like Lee Hodges, the player this week. There are two problems. He's actually getting a little bit of ownership, at least per Fantasy National, so he's probably not going to be as unique as you might think, despite the fact that he has struggled a little bit on a few things. Iron's been good, putting's been good. He generally puts bent well anyway, and he's third in sand saves. The issue is, again, the ownership, and you might guess, he is on the bad half of the draw. He's teeing up tomorrow afternoon. So those two things really hurt Lee Hodges. I don't blame you if you want to use him once. Just understand he's not going to be as unique as you might think he will be. And he does have the bad half of the draw. Another player that I want to like is Ryo Hitsatsune. But much the same. We don't know if he likes this course yet or not. He might not. But he's on the bad half of the draw. So just be mindful of that. But I do like the player. I just don't like his tee time. So I'm really not much in the low sevens. Patrick Rogers, maybe a little bit, because he does have the good half of the draw. You see the irons have not been good lately. I'm playing him more as a unique kind of one-off, maybe. If I would have used a Lee Hodges, I might throw in a Patrick Rogers just for the uniqueness, if it kind of fits in my lineup construction, in that price point, if I'm in that price range or whatever. But I'm not necessarily in love with it. So I'm not much in the low sevens. I'm really kind of bottoming out around an Austin Eckroat or a Lucas Glover, because when we move to the sixes and the fives, I do have a couple of suggestions for you all. So in the 6Ks, I do want to give you all a couple of mentions. The first is CT Pan, rated 8th in my rankings. I like CT Pan quite a bit. The only issue, because he's played this course fairly well. He's pretty unique. Irons have been good. He's okay putting. The short par fours, he plays very, very well. Fifth in the proximity that is most prevalent here at Colonial. There's a lot to like with CT Pan. The one thing that's holding him back, my guess, he's on the bad half of the draw. So just be mindful of that. I'm absolutely going to use CT Pan a little bit. I want to use him a lot, but that tee time does scare me. So instead, the mad scientist play of the week, if you will. My mad scientist play last week was Matt Wallace, and for 2 days he made me look like a genius. And then he, shot 80 bajillion on the weekend and made me look just kind of average. But the mad scientist play this week is Harry Hall. On the good half of the draw, he finished third here last year. Again, very small sample size. Maybe it was just a good week. That's possible. But very unique. Good half of the draw. The irons are okay. He's a much better putter than what is showing here. He's just been in very bad putting form going back the last 24 rounds. But the last 3 tournaments he has gained. So he's rounding back into putting form. 4th in this field in fast bent putting. 6th in sand saves. I like it a lot with Harry Hall. He is the mad scientist play this week. So I'm going to be quite overexposed to Harry Hall. I'm going to have more than 3% Harry Hall. A couple others. Again, I just wanted to highlight Harry Hall the most. Matty Schmidt is worth a look, probably. I think he's on the good half of the draw. Nope, I lied. He's on the bad half of the draw, so maybe not as much as I was hoping for. But rated out well purely by the numbers. In good putting form. The iron's been fine. It's worth a look. I'm not as in love with it because of the bad tee time, but worth a look. But in the 6Ks, I'm probably going mostly with CT Pan and Harry Hall. Justin Lauer's also worth a look, but he is pretty bad in the wind. So just be mindful of that. Justin Lauer rated out extremely well. He's just bad in the wind. Moving into the 5Ks, I do have 1, maybe 2 recommendations for you all. Really 1. If you're going to get greedy, if you're going to try to use Scotty Scheffler, and try to squeeze in as much up top as you can, I do want to give you the name Ches Reavie. He's been lackluster here, but not terrible. He's also been just kind of good at a lot of these things, just kind of, acceptable with the irons. Putting has been acceptable. Like, his worst thing is historically his bent putting, which scares you off a little bit, sure, but when you're getting 5,300 on a player that's his irons have been pretty good, putter's been decent lately, he's on the good half of the draw, he's decent in the wind. I figured I'd give you the name Ches Reavie. I'm going to play him once in my Scotty Scheffler lineup. Just that's what's enabling my Scotty Scheffler lineup because I'm willing to come down to the 5,300. I'm not doing it any more than once. Again, the mad scientist play this week is Harry Hall. Okay. Been going for a while. We still got lineups to make. So, for those who play tiers contests, Tier 1, Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth. Pretty simple for me. I'm actually going to go Colin Morikawa. 2 of these players are on the bad half of the draw. 1 player is on the good half of the draw. That and the fact that I think I'm going to pick up quite a bit of uniqueness off of Scotty Scheffler. I expect Scotty Scheffler to be insanely owned in a tiers contest. Give me a bit of uniqueness, or at least what I think is going to be a little bit of uniqueness. Give me Colin Morikawa in Tier 1. Tier 2, Homa, Finau, Minwoo Lee, Siwoo Kim, and Sungjae. To me, it's between these 2. They're both going to be popular, probably the 2 most popular plays in this tier. So fortunately, I took Morikawa in Tier 1. I'm going to lean Max Homa, but it's pretty close. I mean, as you can see, 6th and 7th in my rankings. I'm going to lean Homa. I don't blame you one bit if you take Finau. Tier 3, Brian Harman, Hoagie, Adam Scott, Harris English, Billy Horschel. Again, despite the fact that he's probably going to be the most popular player in the tier, I can't pass him up. I'm going to go with Brian Harman, number 1 player in my rankings. I don't want any part of Tom Hoagie. Harris English is probably 2nd for me in the tier. If you want to think about trying to get a little bit of uniqueness, maybe you took Scheffler in Tier 1. You might want to think about English in Tier 3, but with the construction that I have going Morikawa Tier 1, I think I can afford to take a chalky Brian Harman in Tier 3. Tier 4, Seabez, McCarthy, Keith Mitchell, Justin Rose, Chris Kirk, Sepp Straka, Keegan. I do like Keegan, but to me it's clearly between Justin Rose and Seabez. Every part of me wants to take Seabez. And I think I'm still going to take Seabez, but Justin Rose and the perceived uniqueness is quite appealing because I do think Justin Rose plays very well. It's close. It's a lot closer than what the rankings would insinuate. I will take Seabez, but Justin Rose is a pretty darn close 2nd for me in Tier 4. Tier 5, Tom Kim, Thomas Dietrich, Batia, Taylor Moore, Aaron Wright, Berger, and Mark Hubbard. Because I've taken Brian Harman, because I've taken Seabez, I don't feel like I can take Aaron Rye. I think he's probably the best choice in this tier, but I'm also pretty darn confident in Thomas Dietrich. So give me Thomas Dietrich in Tier 5 to kind of balance out all of the ownership that I expect from Brian Harman and Seabez. Give me Dietrich in Tier 5. Finally, Tier 6. Let me make sure I'm not blocking you all on that. CT Pan, Michael Kim, KH Lee, Matty Schmid, Andrew Novak, Chan Kim, and Alejandro Tosti. Ugh. I mean, I talked up CT Pan, yes, but I also know that he has the bad half of the draw. Where's Chan Kim? Chan Kim's got the good half of the draw. I know he's rated out almost essentially dead middle of the pack for me. If you're scared of the tee time, maybe think about Chan Kim. But CT Payne is so far and away the highest rated in my rankings that I'm probably just going to go ahead and take CT Payne despite the bad half of the draw. So this tier's construction goes Colin Morikawa in Tier 1. I'll take Max Homa in Tier 2. It is very close between him and Finau. I will give a very slight edge to Homa. Tier 3, Brian Harman. Tier 4, Seabez. Tier 5, we will go Thomas Dietrich. And then Tier 6, we'll go CT Pan. All right, let's start making some classic lineups. The lineups that we're going to put in our GPPs and try to climb the leaderboards and win us some money this week. So let's first start by figuring out what kind of lineups our fellow contestants are making. And we'll have to do two of them. One for those who are playing Scheffler and for those who aren't. If our fellow contestants are starting with Scotty Scheffler, they are not coming down into the 5Ks, at least per Fantasy National, much at all. Ryan Moore at 6.5%, maybe. Ben Martin at 7%, maybe. But otherwise, they're bottoming out at Justin Lauer. So if those are our boundaries, that doesn't give them a lot of wiggle room. You see only 7,600 per player. So I have some serious doubts if our fellow contestants are going to be able to go into the 9Ks if they use a Scotty Scheffler. If they do, it's probably a Tom Hoagie, maybe a Harris English at the very bottom at the 9Ks. But instead, we're going to try and squeeze a Seabez in here for them, considering he is about third or fourth in terms of projected ownership. And you see, even with Seabez, I mean, you're all the way down into the low sevens for the rest of your team, and there's nobody really in the low sevens other than Lee Hodges garnering that much attention. So it doesn't appear, at least for Fantasy National, that these lineups with Scheffler can afford to go Seabez even. They might have to drop down even further. Maybe to a Sepp Straka. And then this allows them 7,400 per player. It can be something like a Mark Hubbard. Andrew Putnam's also getting some attention. If we try to balance this out, Eckroat, Glover, Putnam, it's gonna be 100 over. So, maybe they try to find a one-off from Justin Lauer. Maybe they come down a little bit further. Andrew Novak's at 7.5%, maybe. But I understand this is 100 over. I'm trying to highlight certain areas of the price board here that it feels like our fellow contestants are going to be going to. If indeed they're making these Scotty Scheffler lineups. 14%, pretty heavy, especially in a smaller field. It's not a limited field, but a smaller field, only 132 players. So that ownership's pretty high. If our fellow contestants aren't going to Scotty, let's say they try maybe a more balanced look, maybe Finau, Seabez, who again, I like both of these players. I just think they're going to be too popular to use together unless you really, really emphasize finding a unique play. Akshay Bhatia, definitely in this lineup construction. Aaron Rai, absolutely in this lineup construction. You see 7,700 per player, much more of a balanced look here. Maybe they come up to a Max Homa. I don't know if they can go all the way up to Morikawa. Yeah, 7,200. Maybe they could. But if they go something like Max Homa, who's getting a little bit of attention, not as much as Tony Finau, but this is that 7,500 price range again. You could go like a Mark Hubbard and a Lee Hodges. There's about the same amount of ownership that the Scotty Scheffler lineup had, just a different variation of it, or a different style of lineup, much more balanced. Going Homa, again, Finau would jump this ownership quite a bit. And instead of Lee Hodges, maybe they come up to an Austin Eckroat or a Lucas Glover. Yeah, 15.5%. This looks like probably the more common lineup, I think, would be my guess. Although I do think Scotty Scheffler is going to be probably 30 to 35% owned. if I had to guess. Could be wrong. So with those two style of lineups that seem like they're the chalk for the week, how are we going to maneuver around that? Well, I told you when I went through the price board and rankings and whatnot, I'm going to fade Scotty Scheffler. I know it's a dangerous game to play. It's not a full fade. I'm sure I'll have him a time or two. But I'm going to fade him because of that tee time being on the bad end of the draw, because I like Morikawa so much. I like Homa so much. So let's start with that Scotty Scheffler lineup, because that's not the lineup that I've been gravitating towards the most. Again, with Scotty Scheffler, I have been mostly going down all the way to Ches Reavie. I don't hate the Ches Reavie play at 5,300. If you don't feel comfortable going down there, and I wouldn't blame you if you don't, you got Ben Martin, might be a little bit too popular, but somebody to look at who rated out very well. I'm going to save Harry Hall for the lineup style that I do next. But you could absolutely take a look at CT Pan. You're taking a pretty big chance here because both of these players are on the bad half of the draw. But CT Payne is giving you quite a bit of price savings, and somebody that I really do like this week. But much like the issue that we had with the trying to build the chalky Scotty Scheffler lineup, from here, I mean, I really don't know if you can go into the 8Ks. If you do, it's got to be pretty cheap, I think. You could maybe get away with a Sepp Straka or a Keegan. I really like Thomas Dietrich. So I think I would throw him as my number 2 in a Scotty Scheffler lineup. That way I have enough money to maneuver around here in the 7s. Because again, there's not a lot I like in the low 7s. Lee Hodges is fine. I don't like the ownership. I don't like the tee time. You can maybe think about Patrick Rogers, but man, he's not been in great form lately. I want to like Hitsatsune, but he's in the bad half of the draw. So that's why I've been very conscious of not trying to go too high. Maybe Doug Gim, although I think he has the bad half of the draw as well. Doug Gim. Yeah. He is one of the first groups off in the afternoon. So there isn't a whole lot in the low 7s that I'm crazy about. Only because of the uniqueness. I'll throw in Patrick Rogers. He is... he even has the bad half of the draw. And then here, again, fill it out how you see fit. Maybe you're not afraid of an Andrew Putnam. This is another reason why I've not been making Scotty Scheffler lineups, because it's not the area of the price board that I want to be in. I know I looked him up earlier, but I forgot. Putnam, bad half of the draw. What about Shank? Shank's on the bad half of the draw. Like a lot of these guys in here are on the bad half of the draw. Grillo, I think, is on the bad half of the draw. Yeah. So that's when you start getting, real dicey, playing most of your guys in the bad half of this draw. Dietrich is on the good side, but there's just not a whole lot in the 7s. Like Ricky is on the good half of the draw. Eckroat, I think, is on the good half of the draw. I know he's popular, but yeah. Eckroat's on the good half of the draw. And then 7,100, shoot, you can't even use Rogers like I was going for. So it'd be Gim, Hitsatsune, maybe you want to use the defending champion Grillo. I'll use Hitsatsune because I like the player. I just don't like his tee time. So you're probably going to be fairly unique. I can't say it'd be a completely unique lineup, but I don't think many people are going to Dietrich this week, and I do like him. Fowler's going to be very unique. But it's mainly the fact that in the 7Ks, where you're going to have to live if you want to use a Scheffler, unless you're willing to double six, which I personally don't want to. If you're willing to double six, that opens you up quite a bit. But most of these guys in the sevens have the bad half of the draw. So the lineups that I've been gravitating towards, I've been using my fair share of Colin Morikawa, been using my fair share of Max Homa, but I've been doing my balanced -1 build quite a bit. Bottoming out at Harry Hall, and you don't have to go all the way down to Harry Hall. It's just he's the mad scientist play this week, so I'm highlighting him in these lineups. But you don't have to go down that far. I mean, you can really make balanced lineups work this week. But I've been trying to get greedy in different ways up top. Maybe I do like a Finau, Harmon, Seabez, and like a Rose. Like just getting just squeezing as much in the 9s and the 8s that I can. Justin Rose might be a little bit too much. Again, this would be Thomas Dietrich, who I'm pretty high on. Take a look at Taylor Moore. 7,400, well within reason. I know we just talked about Putnam. I'm not necessarily as high on. Shank, not necessarily. Lee Hodges. But I've been trying to squeeze in as much in the upper 9s, in the 9s, 8s, and upper 7s. And I've been enabling that by going to Harry Hall. So if I even come off of Finau, if I start this team with Harmon, go with Seabez. Again, two players that are very popular. Harry Hall is allowing me to do this with his uniqueness and his pricing. Justin Rose would go into this. Maybe you're not scared of a Denny McCarthy. He seems like he's going to be pretty unique, at least per members at Fantasy National. I don't mind throwing him in a lineup or two. I'm just not as high on him as the ranking of 4th would indicate because of his very poor history at Colonial. But he's unique. Thomas Dietrich, absolutely. Taylor Moore. Again, I don't even mind Batia, although he has the bad half of the draw. This is the kind of lineup that I've been gravitating towards the most. Again, squeezing a whole lot in the 9s and the 8s. Not afraid to come to the upper 7s. It just so happened to fit Thomas Dietrich at 8,000. But I would be hard-pressed to believe that a lineup like this is going to get duplicated. Because I imagine most of our fellow contestants, if they're not going Scheffler, they're going to go Morikawa. So if you're willing to do a more balanced build, and I call this the balanced -1 since I'm willing to drop into the 6Ks. If you're willing to do that kind of structure of a lineup, I think you're going to be pretty popular. And there's a lot of good plays in the 8s and the upper 7s that I like that also have the good half of the draw. Harmon, Seabez, good half of the draw. McCarthy. Like this whole team, this entire team right here is on the good half of the draw. So you don't have to worry about that aspect of it. How much are you factoring the renovation of Colonial in your thought process? For me, I'm factoring it in a little, very little. You see the course value here, so I ended up looking at the past 5 years. I do think it'll change a little bit how Colonial plays. I think the longer par 4s, the 450 to 500 par 4s, might have some added significance this week, at least compared to historical years of Colonial. But I'm factoring it in just a little. So that would be my vote. And then one and done. There are a few ways I can go. I have not used Morikawa, but I'm a little hesitant to use Morikawa because if his irons are truly turning around like what he showed at the PGA, I'm going to want to save him for a bigger tournament, the U.S. Open or a signature event. So I'm a little hesitant to use Morikawa, but he would be a very logical choice. Myself, I've already used Max Homa and Tony Finau both. So I can't use either of these two. These two would be good choices. Harman makes a whole lot of sense. But my first click was Seabez. So right now, I've got Seabez, Christian Bezuidenhout, as my one and done selection this week. I could be talked into Brian Harman. But I've got a pretty strong lean to Seabez right now as my one and done. I want to thank Darnell for jumping in chat. It was good to see you. I want to thank everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking an in-depth look at statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to come up with optimal lineups and finding unique players for you all to use in your shows. Thanks, Gabe, for jumping in chat there right at the end. And a reminder that I'm going to be over in Gabe's Substack chat. We're going to continue the DFS talk over there. We're going to talk about game theory, our favorite areas of the price board. I'm sure we're going to talk about what half of the draw and the players on each half of the draw that we're comfortable using and whatnot. So thanks to you two for jumping in chat. Thanks for all the support. For all the wagers that you have made this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge, for all the DFS contests you played this week for the Charles Schwab Challenge, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.